Nathan Carter had faced danger before: combat zones, high-pressure missions, and the weight of responsibility that came with serving his country. But nothing could have prepared him for the battle he was about to fight in his own neighborhood. After retiring from the military, Nathan had finally settled into the quiet suburban life he had dreamed of. His home was his sanctuary, a cozy two-story house with a wraparound porch, a perfectly manicured lawn, and a flagpole where he proudly flew the stars and stripes. It was the kind of neighborhood where kids rode their bikes until sunset, where neighbors waved as they watered their plants, and where the holiday season transformed the streets into a spectacle of lights and cheer. That is, until Karen happened. Karen Delaney, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association, ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist and a clipboard. She thrived on writing citations, issuing fines, and making sure every blade of grass conformed to her exacting standards. It didn't take long for Nathan to realize that Karen was less about community standards and more about unchecked power. He first crossed paths with her 2 weeks before Christmas. It started with a simple, harmless tradition. Nathan had always loved decorating his house for the holidays. It wasn't anything over the top, just a classic setup: string lights along the roof, a wreath on the door, and a few reindeer figures on the lawn. The neighborhood kids loved it, and so did most of the neighbors. But Karen did not. She showed up on Nathan's doorstep one evening, dressed in her usual beige blazer, armed with an official-looking letter. Her expression was tight-lipped, as if she had been forced to breathe the same air as a delinquent. "Nathan," she began, voice dripping with condescension, "I noticed your decorations." Nathan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "That makes 2 of us." Karen ignored the remark and held out the letter. According to HOA regulations, all exterior decorations must be approved by the board. Your lights exceed the lumens allowed, and those reindeer figures, she gestured at the innocent display on the lawn, are a violation of the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. Nathan took the letter, glancing at the bold, printed words: "Notice of violation, unauthorized holiday decorations." "You're joking, right?" Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. "The HOA takes these rules very seriously. If you don't remove the decorations within 48 hours, you'll be fined $500. And if you fail to comply, additional penalties will be issued." Nathan stared at her for a long moment before chuckling. "Karen, with all due respect, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard." Her eyes narrowed. "Rules are rules." Nathan folded the letter and tucked it into his back pocket. "And some rules are meant to be challenged." Karen's nostrils flared. "I strongly advise you to comply." Nathan gave her a slow, confident smile. "Or what? You gonna call the Christmas police?" Karen's jaw clenched, and without another word, she pivoted on her heels and stormed off. Nathan watched her go, shaking his head. He had dealt with stubborn commanders, arrogant bureaucrats, and even enemy combatants. But Karen? She was a different breed of relentless. As he glanced back at his decorations, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't taking them down. HOA's first power move. Nathan Carter had no intention of backing down. He had fought for his country, defended people's freedoms, and now he wasn't about to let an overzealous HOA dictator tell him how to celebrate Christmas. 2 days passed. His decorations stayed exactly where they were. Then, early one morning, a sharp knock rattled his front door. Nathan groggily pulled it open, expecting a delivery or a neighbor. Instead, he found a crisp white envelope taped to the door, stamped with the HOA's official seal. "Violation notice, second warning. Fine, $750. Failure to comply will result in additional penalties." Nathan let out a low whistle, shaking his head as he pulled the paper free. $750? That's steep for some twinkle lights and a couple of plastic reindeer. Before he could even step inside, a familiar voice rang out from the sidewalk. "I warned you, Nathan." Karen stood there, smug as ever, clipboard in hand. Behind her, a few HOA board members hovered like vultures, nodding in self-righteous approval. Nathan crossed his arms. "Karen, this is ridiculous. It's Christmas decorations, not a Vegas casino." Karen arched a perfectly manicured brow. "Rules are rules." Nathan smirked. "You sound like a broken record." Her expression darkened. "If you fail to pay the fine within 48 hours, the HOA will pursue further action." Nathan leaned against his doorframe. "Oh yeah, like what?" Karen smiled, a slow, deliberate thing that made his skin crawl. "We'll see." She turned on her heel, marching away with her minions in tow. Nathan glanced at the letter again. He wasn't about to roll over and take this. The HOA escalates. By the afternoon, things got worse. Nathan had just finished a workout in his garage when he heard the telltale sound of a vehicle rolling up. A white HOA-marked SUV pulled into his driveway, and out stepped a man in a polo shirt, clipboard in hand. Nathan wiped the sweat off his forehead. "You lost." The man sighed. "HOA inspector. Here to document violations." Nathan's brow furrowed. "You're kidding." The man shook his head. "Sorry, buddy. They're making me document everything." Nathan gestured toward his house. "Go ahead. Get my good side." The inspector hesitated. "Look, between you and me, Karen is making this personal. She's called in extra inspectors all over the neighborhood. But you? You're her favorite target." Nathan's jaw clenched. He wasn't just dealing with a petty HOA now. Karen was weaponizing the system. "Thanks for the heads up," he muttered. Later that evening, things took another turn. Nathan was sipping coffee on his porch when he noticed a car idling at the end of his street. It wasn't the first time. He had seen it 3 times that day. Karen's car. Was she watching him? Nathan's patience snapped. He wasn't the type to start fights, but if Karen wanted one, she'd get it. He pulled out his phone, took a picture of her lurking vehicle, and sent it to his lawyer buddy. "Nathan, ever seen an HOA president stake out someone's house before?" "Ben, that's next level insane." "Nathan, think it counts as harassment?" "Ben, if she keeps it up, I'd say so." "Document everything." Nathan smirked. That's exactly what he planned to do. Karen thought she could bully him into submission? She had no idea who she was messing with. The HOA escalates the conflict. Nathan Carter had dealt with enemies before, but at least in the military, the battle lines were clear. Here, his biggest enemy wore beige blazers and wielded a clipboard like a weapon. And she wasn't backing down. The morning after the HOA inspector's visit, Nathan woke up to an even nastier surprise. A bright red notice taped to his garage door. Final warning. Noncompliance will result in legal action. Failure to pay fines may result in property liens. Nathan exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. A lien? Over Christmas lights? That was a whole new level of absurd. He turned, spotting Karen across the street, standing with another board member, whispering while pretending to admire someone's lawn. Nathan waved the notice in the air. "Really, Karen? A lien? You're escalating this hard over some lights." Karen smirked. "You had your chance to comply, Nathan. Now we follow proper HOA procedures." Nathan walked across the street, stopping a few feet from her. "A lien requires actual legal standing, which you don't have." Karen's smirk didn't falter. "We'll see." Something in her tone sent a warning through Nathan's gut. She wasn't just bluffing anymore. That's when he decided it was time to dig deeper. Investigating the HOA's corruption. Nathan had never been the type to sit back and let someone steamroll him. If Karen wanted a war, he'd fight it on his terms. He spent the next few hours reviewing every HOA document he could get his hands on. The rules, the regulations, anything he could use to push back. Then something interesting caught his eye. The fines. Nathan had been hit with $750 in penalties, so had a few other homeowners he'd talked to. But the official HOA financial reports? They didn't match. A lot of money was missing. A lot. Nathan leaned back in his chair, a slow grin forming. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was running a racket. Neighbors began questioning Karen. That evening, Nathan made his rounds, casually bringing up the HOA fines to a few neighbors. And sure enough, he wasn't the only one who noticed something fishy. Mrs. Patterson, the sweet elderly woman down the block, wrung her hands. "I got fined $300 for a flower pot being the wrong color. But when I asked for an appeal, Karen said the fine had already been processed. It's strange, I never saw anything official." Mr. Diaz, a contractor, scowled. "Karen hit me with a $500 fine for excessive noise while I was repainting my deck. But when I asked to see the HOA's budget breakdown, she refused." Nathan's suspicions solidified. Karen wasn't just being petty, she was stealing. Nathan's plan takes shape. Nathan returned home and opened a fresh email. 2. Redacted. Subject: HOA financial irregularities. "Ben, I need your legal eyes on this. HOA's finances don't add up. I think Karen's skimming fines off the top. Can we request an official audit?" Nathan. He hit send, then cracked his knuckles. This wasn't just about Christmas decorations anymore. Karen had made this personal, and Nathan was about to make her regret it. The HOA oversteps and the protagonist strikes back. Nathan Carter had dealt with corrupt bureaucrats overseas, but he never expected to find one in his own neighborhood. Karen's threats were escalating, and now that he suspected financial fraud, he knew she wasn't going to back down without a fight. But neither was he. Karen's most extreme move yet. Nathan had been expecting another fine, or maybe another passive-aggressive letter. What he didn't expect was to wake up and find a tow truck hooked up to his truck. He stormed outside in his sweatpants, boots barely laced, just as the driver prepared to haul his vintage Ford F-150 off his own driveway. "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what the hell do you think you're doing?" The driver, a guy in his 40s with oil-stained hands, sighed. "HOA order. Says your vehicle is a nuisance." Nathan clenched his jaw. A nuisance? He turned and sure enough, Karen was standing on her porch, arms crossed, watching like a queen overseeing an execution. Nathan stormed over to her. "Karen, this is my property. You can't just tow my truck." Karen smirked. "Actually, I can. Your truck is in violation of Section 4, Paragraph B. Unauthorized vehicles left on driveways for extended periods." Nathan let out a humorless chuckle. "Extended periods? I drove it last night." Karen shrugged. "Rules are rules." Nathan turned to the tow truck driver. "You touch my truck, and I'm suing you and your company for trespassing." The driver hesitated. "Listen, man. If this is illegal, I don't want to get involved." He unhooked the truck, shaking his head. "Sort this out with your HOA." As the tow truck pulled away, Nathan turned back to Karen. "You crossed a very dangerous line." Karen rolled her eyes. "Just pay your fines and remove the decorations, Nathan. This will all go away." Nathan smirked. "You have no idea what you've just done." Exposing Karen's corruption. That night, Nathan made his move. His lawyer friend, Ben, had replied to his email with 2 simple words: "Get proof." And that's exactly what Nathan did. Keycap 1, he requested official HOA financial records. Karen refused. Keycap 2, he spoke with more neighbors. Many of them had suspicious fines that didn't appear on the HOA's books. Keycap 3, he reached out to a local reporter. They were very interested in a potential HOA fraud scandal. By the end of the night, Nathan had enough evidence to blow Karen's little empire apart. And then came the best part. He called for an emergency HOA meeting. The community turns against Karen. Karen strutted into the HOA meeting, smug as ever. She probably thought Nathan was going to back down. She had no idea what was coming. The moment the meeting started, Nathan stood. "I'd like to bring a motion to investigate the HOA's financial records." Karen scoffed. "This meeting isn't about that." Nathan threw a stack of documents onto the table. "It is now. You've been issuing fines that never show up on official records. The numbers don't add up. Where's the missing money, Karen?" The room fell silent. Board members glanced at each other uneasily. Karen's face paled. That's ridiculous. The HOA's financials are private." A murmur of discontent spread through the room. "That's not true," Mr. Diaz, the contractor, spoke up. "HOA members have a right to see where our money is going." Mrs. Patterson nodded. "I paid a $300 fine for my flower pots." "Where did that money go?" More voices joined in. "Yeah, I got fined for a shed I never built. My landscaping violation fee was $500. Where's that money?" Karen stammered. These are baseless accusations. You have no proof." Nathan smirked. "Actually, I do." He pulled out a USB drive and plugged it into the projector. The screen lit up with spreadsheets, side-by-side comparisons of recorded fines versus collected fines. Thousands of dollars were missing. The room exploded. "You've been stealing from us? This is illegal. We need to call the authorities." Karen's face turned red. This is just a misunderstanding." Nathan folded his arms. "Tell it to the state auditors. I already filed a complaint." For the first time since this war began, Karen looked scared. Karen refuses to back down. Even with the entire neighborhood turning against her, Karen still refused to admit defeat. "You think you've won?" she hissed at Nathan as people shouted over one another. "You think you can just take me down?" Nathan chuckled. "No, Karen. You did that all on your own." As the meeting spiraled into chaos, Nathan knew one thing for certain. Karen's reign was crumbling. Karen's final, desperate move. Karen Delaney had spent years ruling the neighborhood like her own personal kingdom, but now, her grip was slipping. Nathan had exposed her, and the community was furious. But if Karen was anything, she was relentless. And that made her dangerous. Karen's last-ditch effort. Nathan expected Karen to lay low after the disastrous HOA meeting. He was wrong. The next morning, he found another letter taped to his door. But this one wasn't just another fine. It was a lawsuit. Homeowners Association versus Nathan Carter. Civil complaint for noncompliance and defamation. Nathan let out a low whistle. Oh, Karen, you're getting desperate. He flipped through the pages. She was suing him for $10,000 in damages, claiming that his refusal to remove the decorations had caused emotional distress and irreparable damage to the HOA's reputation. Nathan laughed. Out loud. Then his phone rang. Ben, his lawyer buddy. You see it? Nathan asked. Oh, I saw it, Ben said, amused. She really thinks this is going to scare you? Nathan smirked. She must have forgotten I don't scare easy. Good. Because this is completely baseless. We'll counter it, and when it gets thrown out, we'll slap her with legal fees. Nathan exhaled, his patience wearing thin. She's digging her own grave. Ben chuckled. Then let's give her a shovel. Karen's a legal move. Karen wasn't done yet. That night, Nathan was reviewing his case when his security camera alert buzzed. His brows furrowed. Motion detected. Front porch. He tapped into the live feed. And there she was. Karen. Sneaking onto his porch with a measuring tape and a notepad. Nathan's blood ran cold. Was she trying to fake another violation? He grabbed his phone and hit record. Karen bent down, took pictures of his porch, then scribbled something on her clipboard. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a roll of tape. Nathan's jaw tightened. Was she planting something? That was it. Nathan flung his door open. Karen. Karen froze. Then she bolted. Nathan's military reflexes kicked in. Oh, hell no. He sprinted after her. Karen made it halfway across his lawn before she tripped over a sprinkler head. She hit the grass hard, her clipboard flying out of her hands. Nathan walked over, arms crossed. Going somewhere? Karen scrambled up, red-faced. I was just. Nathan smirked. Just what? Trespassing? Planting evidence? Fabricating violations? Karen paled. That's ridiculous. Nathan held up his phone. Security footage says otherwise. Her face drained of color. Then sirens. A police cruiser pulled up. Nathan's neighbor, Mr. Diaz, stepped outside, arms folded. Yeah, I called the cops. Figured it was time someone did. Karen whirled on him. I am the HOA president. I have every right to. The officer stepped out. Ma'am, we just got a call about trespassing and possible fraud. You want to explain why you're sneaking around his property? Karen stammered. This is a misunderstanding. I was just inspecting. Nathan held up his phone. You planted something. On my porch. You tried to frame me. The officer's gaze hardened. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me for questioning. Karen's entire body stiffened. Nathan smirked. Hope you like answering questions, Karen. She tried to protest, but the officer escorted her to the car. As she was placed in the back seat, Nathan leaned in through the window. This isn't over, she hissed. Nathan grinned. Oh, I know. Because the real punishment was just beginning. HOA crumbles and Karen's downfall. Karen Delaney had spent years terrorizing the neighborhood, but now she sat in the back of a police car, her smug superiority replaced with rage and panic. But Nathan Carter wasn't done yet. He had fought for his country, and now he was going to make sure this wannabe dictator never abused her power again. Karen faces the fallout. The police didn't immediately arrest Karen that night, but they did take her in for questioning. Trespassing and attempted fraud were serious accusations, and with security footage as proof, she couldn't talk her way out of it. The next morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Nathan walked out to get his mail and found a crowd of neighbors gathered outside his house. Mrs. Patterson, the sweet elderly woman Karen had fined for her flower pots, shook her head. Never thought I'd see the day she got what was coming to her. Mr. Diaz chuckled. Serves her right. We all knew she was dirty, but you? You took her down. Nathan smirked. And I'm not finished yet. Because while Karen was officially in trouble, the HOA itself still stood. And Nathan wasn't about to let that continue. The HOA meeting that changed everything. Nathan called for another HOA meeting. But this time, Karen wasn't there. Instead, she sent a lawyer. A smug, expensive-looking suit who walked in like he owned the place. On behalf of my client, we demand all accusations be dropped, he announced. She is still the duly elected HOA president. Nathan laughed. Out loud. Not anymore, she's not. He stood up, holding a stack of signed petitions. These are signatures from 80% of the homeowners. We're voting her out. Right now. The lawyer paled. You can't just. Nathan turned to the remaining HOA board members. Unless any of you want to go down with her? They looked at each other. Then, one by one, they voted Karen out. Karen is removed from the HOA. It happened fast. With Karen officially stripped of power, the city began investigating all the fines, fraudulent charges, and missing money. The result? Small Blue Diamond, the HOA, was slapped with massive fines. Small Blue Diamond, some board members resigned in shame. Small Blue Diamond, the city forced new leadership elections. And Karen? She vanished. For a few days, no one saw her. Until the for sale sign popped up in front of her house. The final humiliation. Nathan was sipping coffee on his fully decorated porch when he saw Karen loading boxes into a moving truck. She was leaving. For good. As she struggled to fit a suitcase into the overstuffed vehicle, Mr. Diaz leaned over to Nathan. You thinking what I'm thinking? Nathan smirked. Oh, absolutely. He walked over, stopping just a few feet away. Hey, Karen. Karen froze. She turned, her face red with anger and embarrassment. What do you want? She snapped. Nathan grinned. Just making sure you didn't forget to pay any moving violations. You know how strict the HOA can be. Karen's face turned purple. She huffed, slammed the trunk shut, and sped off. The neighborhood erupted in cheers. For the first time in years, people could breathe easy. Karen was gone. And Nathan? He finally got to enjoy his Christmas decorations. The HOA faces full legal consequences. With Karen gone, the neighborhood breathed a sigh of relief. But Nathan Carter knew one thing for certain. Just because the queen had fallen didn't mean the kingdom was safe. The HOA itself still had to be dealt with. And Nathan wasn't stopping until every last trace of corruption was wiped out. The HOA's reckoning. 1 week after Karen's humiliating departure, the city's audit report came in. And it was worse than anyone expected. Small Blue Diamond, over $50,000 in missing HOA funds. Small Blue Diamond, dozens of illegal fines. Small Blue Diamond, forgery of official documents. It wasn't just shady, it was criminal. Nathan sat back in his chair, reading the report with a satisfied smirk. He already knew Karen had been pocketing money, but now? Now the whole neighborhood knew. And they wanted justice. The lawsuit that ended it all. Nathan didn't have to do much after that. The evidence spoke for itself. Within days, homeowners banded together and filed a class action lawsuit against the HOA. Even some of the remaining board members turned on each other. We had no idea she was doing this, one of them stammered during a neighborhood meeting. Nathan arched a brow. Sure you didn't. With the legal pressure mounting, the HOA was left with two choices. Keycap 1, fight the lawsuit and lose everything. Keycap 2, dissolve the HOA entirely. And in the end, they chose option 2. The HOA was officially dissolved. For the first time in years, the neighborhood was free. No more absurd fines. No more Karen. No more petty power plays. Just peace. Nathan's final power move. As a final cherry on top, Nathan made sure Karen couldn't slither away unnoticed. With the help of a local reporter, the entire story was published in a news article. Neighborhood HOA president ousted after corruption scandal. Homeowners reclaim their rights. And right at the bottom, a picture of Karen being escorted by police. Nathan smirked as he read the article. Karen thought she could control everyone. She thought she could intimidate them. She thought she could win. But in the end, she lost everything. Karen's personal downfall. Karen Delaney had spent years lording over the neighborhood, controlling every detail of people's lives. Now, she was a disgraced nobody. Nathan Carter wasn't one to kick someone when they were down. But for Karen, he'd make an exception. Because karma had a way of handling people like her. Karen's reputation in shambles. The news article about the HOA's corruption scandal spread like wildfire. Karen wasn't just the subject of neighborhood gossip. Her name was now public record. Small Blue Diamond local businesses refused her service. Small Blue Diamond, she was banned from multiple HOA groups online. Small Blue Diamond, she lost her standing in local political circles. Even the nearby neighborhoods had heard about her. Nathan overheard a conversation at the grocery store. Did you hear about that crazy HOA lady? Oh yeah, I saw the article. Can you imagine living under someone like that? Glad she got what she deserved. Nathan chuckled as he grabbed his coffee. She had no power anymore. Karen's final attempt to fight back. But Karen wasn't the type to go quietly. A week after her humiliating move out, Nathan got a tip from his lawyer buddy, Ben. Ben, you're gonna love this. Karen filed an appeal against her fines. Nathan, seriously? Ben, yep. She walked into City Hall demanding they erase the penalties against her. Nathan, how'd that work out for her? Ben, the clerk laughed her out of the building. Nathan grinned. Even now, Karen thought she could bully her way back to the top. But the world had moved on. And Karen, she was just another cautionary tale. Poetic justice. One evening, Nathan was sitting on his porch when his neighbor, Mr. Diaz, walked up with his phone in hand, grinning. You are not going to believe where Karen ended up. Nathan raised a brow. Try me. Mr. Diaz turned his phone around, showing an employment listing. Karen Delaney, newly hired administrator, for another HOA. Nathan laughed so hard he nearly spilled his drink. Of course, Karen wasn't capable of change. She had no choice but to crawl back into another HOA. Only this time, she wasn't the president. She was just another paper-pushing admin. Nathan smirked, taking a sip of his drink. Karma's got a sense of humor. Epilogue and final mic drop. The neighborhood had changed. For the first time in years, there were no ridiculous HOA fines. No sneaky board members patrolling with clipboards. No one telling people what color their mailboxes had to be. And most importantly, no Karen. A neighborhood transformed. Nathan Carter stood on his front porch, taking in the sight of a community reborn. Christmas tree houses were fully decorated for Christmas, brighter and bolder than ever. Dog-faced dogs ran freely without the threat of unauthorized breeds nonsense. Artist pallet yards were colorful, unique, lived in. Without Karen's iron grip, the neighborhood felt like home again. Nathan leaned against the railing, watching a group of kids race their bikes down the sidewalk. He had fought a lot of battles in his life. But this victory felt especially sweet. A final laugh. As he sipped his coffee, Nathan noticed a small envelope taped to his door. He sighed, shaking his head. If this was another violation. He tore it open and burst out laughing. Inside was a fake HOA fine. Violation notice. Your Christmas decorations are too damn awesome. Fine. 1 cup of coffee, payable to your grateful neighbors. Nathan chuckled, shaking his head as he glanced across the street. Mr. Diaz smirked and raised his coffee cup in a cheers. Nathan lifted his own in return. The HOA was gone. Karen was gone. And peace was finally here.